7'5" beanpole Connor Vanover, via Oral Roberts, via Arkansas, via Cal, has made his way to Columbia for an official visit. We've talked about Vanover in previous podcasts. I don't know if you and I specifically. I know that Watkins and I talked about him a little bit last week.
Yeah,
as a possibility. I am always leery of like really, really tall, kind of lumbering guys who can be played off the floor. He is that guy in the right context, and I believe that Paul Mills did a good job of finding context. Granted, it's a very different league, but finding good context for Connor and putting him in better positions. Because certainly hedging ball screens is not where you want Mr. Vanover.
No. This is one where I'm sure if he commits, Arkansas fans are gonna invade mentions, slandering him and saying he's terrible. I think a lot, any transfer is really about role and fit. I think Connor Vanover can work in the right system, or if you make the right tweaks. When he went to Oral Roberts, Oral Roberts switches everything. They do get out and they do hedge ball screens, but if it's, a 1-5 ball screen, Connor's in deep drop coverage. And, they're having that guy kind of get out a little bit, and they have some guys pre-rotate from the help side into gaps. So they put some stuff in place to account for that and to account for the fact that, he's not a guy who you can really trust laterally or to recover back. I don't think that's me, speaking ill of the kid. That's what the tape shows. Teams, when he played at Arkansas, attacked the living hell out of him in ball screens. They hunted him. In the, summit, some drop coverage and some smart help tweaks can mitigate that because it's the 24th best league in the country. We're going to start with that negative because I think that's the rub here for Missouri is, when we started the spring, finding a big was about, really, I think, finding a guy who could fit what they wanted to do on the defensive end of the floor. And that was, a guy like Caden Shedrick who could play multiple ball screen coverages, but was still good enough to get back and play in the post. Still had enough, was light enough on his feet he could do that, but still had enough, of a sturdy build that he could play in the block. That's not Connor. You can move Connor on the block. You can play him in space. So we'll start by saying we get it. There are concerns about that end of the floor, but that's why you pay Dennis Gates $4 million a year. That's why you pay the staff more than $1 million a year to figure out how to mitigate those things. And I don't think they're going to do what Eric Musselman did, which is essentially punt and put him on the bench. But I think you need context for why Muss did that. Muss really doesn't play more than 7 guys. And once Jalen Williams was good to go, those minutes were for Jalen and they weren't for anybody else. And so Connor got sidelined and, rebooted last year.
Well, that was also, wasn't that Justin Smith too? And when he kind of got healthy and they started playing smaller with him at the 5, because he was like a 3-4 hybrid at Indiana.
Yeah, they started to go, the last 2 years, really, they started to go smaller at their 5 spot. This year, they went back bigger. Well, with the Mitchell twins, you could still kind of attack a little bit in ball screens if you got them in the right spot. It was just Muss is ruthless. In like the best sense of the word, he will optimize his lineup for the very best thing it can do and just beat you to death with it. And that's what he did. And there are guys who, if you don't fit that, there's not pity minutes there. Muss is not just going to throw you 5 to 10 minutes a game to keep you. Muss trusts himself to go into the portal and get someone to do what he needs to do. Connor didn't fit what that vision was. He had to go to Oral Roberts to find a staff that would make some adaptations for him. The question is, if he comes to Missouri, if he commits to Missouri, what does that look like? What does that role look like? What does that fit look like? And to what degree is Missouri going to use him within its rotation? So I think we'll start with the questions first there, because you can't really talk about this potential addition without going at those first. And we hear it, we know what people will say, and there's some validity to it. This is where you trust the creativity of the staff to overcome it. And we'd have to see what they would do, but you can't downplay them. That they exist for a reason.
Well, yeah, and I think as any time that you have been exposed to a player as sort of as much as we were as Missouri fans exposed to Vanover, and sort of what Drew Smith and Jeremiah Tillman did with him, like there's always going to be like a pause. Like one of the reasons why Missouri had success against that Arkansas team was because like Jeremiah Tillman was not fazed by Vanover's size. Drew Smith was not worried about attacking downhill against him. And Missouri put him defensively in positions. Again, some of this is kind of on Muss and like what he was doing, and asking a guy with that level of mobility out on the perimeter to do defensively. But there's definitely like one of those things where you are hoping with an up transfer like this that there is the understanding of the staff that they're going to do the right thing with him. They're not just going to ask him to play the same way they asked Noah Carter to play. They're not going to ask him to play like Kobe Brown. Yeah. That what, or even like Mo Diarra. Like you can't expect Vanover to come in and even defend like Mo Diarra was able to defend on the perimeter. So I think you're definitely looking at different styles of defense. You're looking at buying maybe some more minutes in the zone. Missouri's shown that they can be pretty tough with the zone defense and junk it up a little bit. And I think Dennis Gates has sort of shown throughout his coaching career that he's not afraid to sort of be a little bit junky defensively, and just get creative with like the talent he has on hand. I think if they land a guy like Shedrick, you probably see exactly what Dennis Gates wants to be, defensively. They didn't, and so you change what you want to do a little bit. And yeah. I think he's shown, at least in his brief tenure at Missouri and previously at Cleveland State, that he's creative, and he'll figure out a way to kind of utilize what he has. So, and this is all saying like we don't even know if he's going to commit. He might take a minute, might go to Wichita State, see what Paul Mills is talking about, if he's going to fit there. But if he does commit, how he fits, I think it'll be interesting to watch how Gates kind of deploys both him and Carlero, who I think there are also some questions about.
Yeah, what I will say is I like this better than Jimmy Bell. Just that entire sort of process was kind of head scratching, because Jimmy Bell, okay rebounder, not a great shot blocker, no skill on offense, grades out worse than Vanover in pick and roll defense. So by almost every account, it made less sense to look at Jimmy Bell than this move. So I think you can say that they've at least found someone that's a little better fit. That the upside here is, the thing that I would point out is they were looking at a guy like Jamarian Sharp, who has some mobility, has some lateral quickness, but can still get attacked in ball screens, can still get moved in post ups. And Missouri fans for 2 years were salivating over the idea of Jamarian Sharp. And there were real questions about what he could do against SEC caliber bigs on the block and against stronger bigs on the block, to hold position, to box out and win contested rebounds. The one thing that tips this, I think, in favor of Connor Vanover is there's a better offensive fit here. He's a guy who is not a banger on the block. He's not going to be a guy who you're going to run a lot of punch plays for. He's a guy who is going to set screens, pop. He's going to roll, or he's going to slip. You can space him a little bit. He can shoot trail threes. He's going to keep your spacing the way you want, and he can play in some dribble handoffs. He can play in, some actions around the elbow. Again, understanding that this is a guy who, if you look at his history, is probably more of a role guy between 12 and 15 minutes a game. But he can come in and he can, do the things you need him to do to keep the offense flowing, to keep it in rhythm. And the real question is going to be, his shot. He's a streaky 3-point shooter. Can you maybe shift him more towards a rim finisher? That's not quite as much of what he was at Oral Roberts. They gave him carte blanche to pull, and he pulled a lot. But he's a better fit, I think, offensively. More developed than Shedrick offensively, and definitely ahead of Jimmy Bell. But that's being balanced against, like we've just talked about extensively, his defensive, what he brings to the defensive end of the floor. And are you, really swapping it out and getting a net push? But I think the bigger deal as well is this, and we can talk about this if you want, is I think it really spares you from getting into some dicey rotations and setups, lineups, in the front court. I really think I would have had reservations if Jesus Carolero was your backup 5. I think there would have been a lot of questions, or there will be a lot of questions if that's the case. Landing, Connor Vanover, I think would help the structure of the front court be a little bit more logical if they can get him in, and understanding that he's buying in to, sort of a reserve role here. But we'll see. We'll see what they come away with.
And at least, reserve kind of minutes, because I think one of the things that, having, somebody who can eat up more minutes at the 5 gives you is it does allow, Noah Carter to, play a little bit more of the playmaking guy at the 4, which he's shown a propensity to, be efficient in that role. And I think is probably more of a comfort level than him being a true 5.
Yeah.
It also allows you to, mix and match in the front court with, whether it's Noah Carter, Aiden Shaw, or Trent Pierce, and getting guys like, those younger guys more experience in a more comfortable spot. Like not having to find 12 to 15 minutes of center play from, some kind of combination of Aiden Shaw or Trent Pierce or, Jordan Butler, not needing those guys, and then taking, what they provide you, once they sort of show up and get more acclimated.
Yeah. And you can also, I think, put, Jesus more in the 4 spot, where I think he'll be a better fit as facilitating big in that spot. So landing Connor Vanover, presuming that's the goal here, and they wouldn't bring him on campus if it wasn't. I think, we can nitpick and we can have genuine qualms about his game and fit, but on balance, I think it would be a pickup that, we can look at and say, okay, this is a net positive for the program if they can get him in. Again, particularly at this point, because, man, the shelves are empty. The shelves are empty right now. And, if you just look at the potential, performance rating for Vanover, he's probably one of the 4 or 5 best options still on the board right now.
Hey, Evan Mia, BPR loves him.
Yep, and he's one of the top 25 bigs this spring in terms of that BPR rating. So to get a guy like that in early June, that's better than the alternative right now, because after that, once you get outside of Vanover, Olivier Nkamwa, Grant Nelson, you're starting to really have to hope that David Woka, a bench guy for UNLV, could help you. Then you're really getting into either freshmen like Adrama Diange, who we've talked about. You're looking at Isaiah Miranda, who isn't considering Missouri. And then just guys who are, real deep in the weeds here. If Connor Vanover committed tonight, he'd be the 95th big out of like the top 110 bigs to come off the board. We're late. This is you can't really nitpick at this point, and on balance, it's probably the best you could do right now outside of Kamala or Nelson at this juncture in the portal season.